All right, hi everybody. Welcome to the February 20th Cloud Custodian Community Meeting. Putting the notes for this in the chat. Oh, and thanks, Stephen. I see a pull request to have a look at, so we'll get there. I think the main agenda item coming out of this was for folks who may or may not have attended the recent Cloud Custodian Day. Videos are posted now. So there's a link in the notes to a playlist. So we've got a bunch of stuff in here, and it seems like there's, from what we've heard so far, some pretty solid feedback. A good range of talks, starting some conversations, raising follow-up questions. So it seemed like a good thing. Does anyone have any feedback or questions? Any follow-up items related to Custodian Day? All right. Well, video playlist it is then. And if anyone watching this recording later has any follow-ups, then we can jump in through Slack and talk about it. That was really the main top-level agenda item. Was that? Does anybody else on the call, before we get into individual issues or PRs, have anything to bring up? No. Okay. Then the one, Stephen, that you just posted is looking at removing record sets. Okay. Okay, it looks like there was some reviews on this. Okay, so this was an action that we were adding, but it looks like there's a delete instead. Okay, so Kapil, I see you already had some comments on this one. Is there anything to add to this right now?
I think the updates look good. So when we initially had delete unhosted zone, it was deleting the records internally, and now this adds a delete records thing. So like the patch is probably as simple as it can be made. The additional question would be whether or not we would remove the hosted zones record deletion that it's doing right now to instead delegate to the delete records that we now have on the RR set. But that would still need querying out the R set. So I mean, it's probably fine as is. Like there's some stuff we could do to, I think, optimize to get the composition use, but I'm not sure it's worth the trouble, to be honest. So, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it also depends, like if the RR set has like querying capabilities to get to the parent. I started looking at this stuff and timed out. If we could, because our set's a child resource, so to evoke the action, we'd want to only query the resources on that parent zone. And it wasn't clear if we had that all the way wired through. So what's there is, I think, fine.
Okay.
Cool.
Sounds good. And I see this one from Jerry too. Actually, yeah, before we jump those, Stephen, did you have a follow-up there or just?
Oh, no, yeah, just saying thanks for the, checking that one out. We're hoping to get that one merged in. Just wanted to make sure there wasn't any other follow-up items on that.
I saw your comment about trying to get it into the release. Segueing into when's the release, I guess, is the other topic on that. I'm currently waiting on Oracle to merge a pull request with regards to getting the latest cryptography updates, so we don't have to ship with a dependency on something with CD. It's been 2 weeks. They've shipped multiple releases. They don't seem to address it. I gave them a pull request. We'll see. Yeah. So this is currently blocking our ability to update cryptography, which you know, the automated updaters keep dropping pull requests into our repo for, but we can't do it till that gets addressed by OCI.
Got it.
By Oracle. And so if you know anyone over there, I've raised this with them previously because they keep that pin really tight. And I've referenced what the other cloud providers do in the sense that even Azure, which has this pin, actually pins 2 versions in advance because of the deprecation policy cryptography has, because they have a very solid deprecation policy that tries to be inclusive of this stuff. So I don't know, but we'll see. That's the only blocker right now in the release is trying not to ship with a known CV issue and cryptography as a dependency.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that. Hopefully they merge that thing. Jerry, from your side, this one looks like, at a glance, this looks pretty straightforward. So you're adding a resource and some base actions to it.
Yeah.
I know we've had some other Bedrock stuff going on. So
Yeah.
thanks everyone for forming that.
I was trying to test it out, but yeah, I couldn't get to it fully. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. Thanks for that one. I'll have to take a look at that too. Cool. So Jerry, just ping for a review on that, or did you have any specific questions about it? Or?
No. I just highlight that one for review because Batush may cut a release, so that's it. I'm hope to get this into next release.
Okay. Yeah, take a look at that one. Cool. There's another one, something I saw, and I have not responded. I don't know if we've seen some activity around app mesh recently, and there's this whole discussion. I don't know if anyone else happens to have seen this. I didn't respond yet because there's a lot here. But it seems like we're trying to add what looks like a child resource and also, like, as a side piece of this, also trying to figure out just clarity around what all the fields are on resource managers. I just wanted to bring this up in case anyone happens to have seen it and has thoughts, but otherwise, I do have some responses I want to make to this. I think Kapil, you would commented, and Pratush, you may have also on some of the previous app mesh work, and there was an aborted pull request too that was trying to add a bunch of comments and tests. Is there anything worth going over here during this meeting, you think, or just keep it in the discussion?
Yeah, I think this is more on the discussion side. Like,
yeah,
this is pretty meandering.
Yeah,
one.
There's a lot here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do just think because I know even if I'm reviewing pull requests for new resource types or adding some myself, I do have to take a minute to think, well, like, what really makes sense is the ID or the name here. I know there's also this recurring concern of if there's something like an ARN that we get back from some nested attribute on a resource, can we support a James Path expression instead of just a top level key, which seems reasonable to me as long as it's useful and necessary. But yeah, I guess under the topic of, I know we're going to have some documentation pushes coming up. So I'm trying to think of a discussion like this in that frame of mind, like for someone who's adding a resource, how can we make things as clear as possible?
Yeah, and it'll be great to see some of these questions like make their way into the developer docs on your resource that we already have.
Yeah. All right. So I think that's all I've got for top items. We'll make a note. We'll add some of these pull request that we brought up to the meeting.
There is an interesting one on 1996, which I think we had referenced in a DM. I was curious if anyone on the call is using the AWS CC provider. This person is trying to use it, and they hit an issue with the update action. I've got a PR up to fix it, but we'll also be adding in, I think, the ability to do partial patching on the resources. But this might be a little too in the weeds. But I was just curious if anyone using the AWS CC provider. This is
What is that? AWS CC provider.
Yeah. AWS CC is an additional AWS provider for Cloud Custodian based on the Cloud Control API from AWS, which is the underlying engine that that CloudFormation uses for resource creation, deletion, and updates. So,
like CDK stuff. What do you?
No, not exactly CDK. CDK is a source format. This is more a directly operating against the resource. So CloudFormation itself has a provider for each resource, and those providers provide a CRUD API for those resources. So create the resource, delete the resource, update the resource, and the AWS CC provider gives custodian the ability to use those same CloudFormation providers to do resource governance against those resources, inclusive of delete and update.
No,
Yeah. I
we're
know
not using that, but it seems interesting.
Yeah, this I see the code in the CC provider in Cloud Custodian. I mean, no, actually, since we talked about this,
the internal provider. It's got very good coverage of resources. It's probably got like, I don't know, several hundred more than standard custodian, because it's able to leverage the CloudFormation types. The provider implementation itself is a little bit magical, I guess, because we're trying to automatically bind. We're effectively automatically binding to the JSON descriptor files that the CloudFormation type registry has to expose that. But it is functional. It's not widely used yet. And this is just this particular one around doing, partial updates is just a, good usability thing. Mostly just curious if other people are interested. If people are interested in trying it out, definitely always curious for feedback. There is some roadmap-y stuff on this provider with regards to event-based modes, which it currently does not support.
It seems like if we do more with the Cloud CC provider, then we're gonna rely less on new resource creation. I mean, CC provider could do lots of generic stuff, right?
It could, except it depends that CloudFormation supports it. Not always the case. B, that there are peculiarities. Like if you've ever found CloudFormation to do something weirdly, you're going to hit it with this provider too, because some of the behaviors here are strange. And it's not something that we can easily work around. We have looked, so this does provide stronger resource type coverage, yes, but the peculiars of working with individual resources are still there. Additionally, you're dependent on CFN support. Finally, there is some notion here on, I was actually talking with Sonny about this right before this call, on whether or not we can use some techniques to do some additional generation of custodian resources directly against the underlying service APIs for better coverage in some cases. But like I said, we're going to support both providers going forward. That's still a given. The entire attribute space changes out. So in many cases, say you're trying to look for CloudTrail status on a CloudTrail, that's not going to show up in this provider because that doesn't expose those types of fields. So you get weird things where what you want to do governance on isn't necessarily available through the attributes that are spec'd out in Cloud Control. So there are still differentials there, just to be aware of. But from a coverage perspective, it's great to have this additional coverage capability set. But we're still going to add new resources to standard custodian provider and support that going forward. But we're supporting both, I guess, in this context.
Okay.
Yeah, one question I had looking at this, I haven't responded yet, still getting my head around it. But the patch here, this syntax, I mean, it looks very JSON patch. Is it also similar to how the Kubernetes support does patching? Is it like similar enough?
It is very much JSON patch. So I was actually just implementing that suggestion there. The underlying API on Cloud Control actually takes a JSON patch document. So
okay.
In this case, we're actually, if you write a patch, we're just directly going to pass it back through to the API. So do less work type of thing. Kubernetes on the controller mode does do patches. Mutating controller will do patches as well as on updates. So in that context, yes, JSON patch seems to be, I don't want to say standard, but like, a reasonable
choice.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, looking at this at a glance, I'm like, oh yeah, that looks like JSON patch. And then I'm thinking, well, to a custodian policy author, is seeing JSON patch syntax going to be, like, is that going to be clear, or is there another way? And I couldn't think of another way that made sense.
So yeah, I did look at the other way. So, okay, if you go back up, scroll up again. And like he was trying to do some of these updates, and I was like, well, we could try to do the merge by like directly in that case, but then you get into the weird case where you want to remove the key, and then it's like, okay, why don't we just adopt the standard sort of here for this?
Yeah, I could see trying to have like some simpler thing with some magic words, and and then it just ends up being too magic. I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and there should be pretty sure there's JSON patch usage in the Kubernetes provider under the node.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. I wasn't sure if the Kubernetes one was using JSON patch or not. If it is, that's cool.
The updates and the mutating controllers should be using JSON patch there.
Yeah,
Yes.
and if we've got a couple examples of what to do and then some pointers to docs on JSON patch, I mean, that seems like a pretty flexible way to do it. So cool. And then the other PR that was open was at least just making sure we were only trying to touch fields that were actually readable.
Actually, I merged into this PR.
Okay. Okay.
I did that PR, and then I realized that simply doing that didn't address what he was actually trying to do. Because like the way he had structured it wasn't. We would be doing partial updates. Like we're doing whole value replacement right now. So he sets worker configuration. We're going to replace the entire worker configuration, which is not what he actually wanted in this case. He just wanted to enable encryption, for example. And so that wasn't aligned to what his underlying goal was, even though we fixed the create read property stuff. Wanted to try to actually address what the underlying issue was, because otherwise it doesn't actually fix the issue.
Cool. Yeah, I could actually see. I don't want to open a can of worms with it, but I could definitely see that that patch type behavior being useful elsewhere. I'm sure you were thinking about that too, like some of the existing actions that we might have to do kind of strangely today. So it'd be good to keep in mind.
Yeah, the problem is like in this provider we're in a data diffing space, so it's okay. Whereas in most providers we're in a map diff to API, so it doesn't like.
That's true. That's fair.
It doesn't really quite work the same way.
Good point. All right. Anybody else thoughts on this one or any other topics come to mind? Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Go watch the videos if you're curious and haven't already seen the talks from Custodian Day. And looks like we've got a couple of reviews to get to. And we'll see you all in Slack.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.